Good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse. I'm here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, and I know we've got some familiar faces in the crowd today, but we've got a lot of newbies too. And so if you are new to us, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, everything we do goes to our YouTube channel, so if you want to watch this in 3 weeks or 3 years down the road or catch one of over 3,000 other broadcasts, you can do so right there long after we're done. Lots of opportunity to keep the learning going. Now, I'm always an excited guy, as you can probably tell. But today I am particularly excited because we are diving in with one of the best series we've ever come up with here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Now, yesterday, February 11th, is the International Day for Women in STEM. If you didn't celebrate, go check it out. There's all sorts of amazing social media posts, websites, campaigns, everything around that really, really special day. Now, what we've always done to commemorate that day is kick out all the men all February long. We do about 55 broadcasts every single year, all free, all interactive, with some of the most amazing women scientists and explorers on planet Earth. And this year, I am so privileged because we got the chance to partner with the amazing folks at If Then. If Then is the greatest single initiative ever celebrating and showcasing women in STEM careers. It is incredible. Everyone should go check it out right now. They're all over social media. They've got a beautiful website, lots to explore and discover. And among their amazing initiatives, they have 125 ambassadors, women that emphasize the best of the best in science and exploration. And this week alone, we are bringing on 16 of them, everything from neuroscience to cave diving to deep sea diving. We've got a little bit of everything, and I hope you'll join us. All our programs are on our If Then page. Lots to explore and discover there. Now today, before I introduce our special first speaker, our headline act of this incredible series, I want to note we are going to have a Kahoot together. So if you want to play along, 4-question quiz between our talk and our Q&A, test your understanding, have a little bit of fun, win our everlasting respect, you can do so with that game pin. I will announce that again. Now, today, I'm so thrilled to welcome in the person who helped make this whole series possible. Dr. Becca Peixotto is a world-class archaeologist. She's had the chance to wade through swamps in pursuit of lost American history. She's gone deep diving into some of the most narrow cracks and caves to unlock the mysteries of past human species. And today, she's going to share a little bit about her career story and her adventures for all of you. This isn't about me. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to turn you over to Becca to blow your mind over the next 25 minutes or so. Thank you all so much for being here. And Dr. Becca, welcome to the broadcast again.
Hello. It's so exciting to be here. I think the last time I was with you guys, I was in a museum talking about some of this archaeology. And before that, I actually got to do this from the cave. Today, I'm just in my living room. But I'm really excited to be able to talk to everybody and talk a little bit about archaeology. So, oh, there's my screen. That's what I was hoping to see. So we're going to talk about archaeology, and I'm really excited to be part of the If Then series here and to have been part of the If Then program for the last few years. Absolutely amazing women in science. We have a lot of great fun together and a lot of learn a lot from so many of these women. So why is my slide not going next?
Because something should go a little wrong in every video broadcast. Otherwise, it's no fun, Becca. But if we rejigger it, I like to smack my computer sometimes. It makes me feel really satisfied when it doesn't want to work.
There we go. Hey. All right. So I just want to give you a little bit of orientation, show you on the map where we are. I'm here in Yarmouth, Maine. And we're going to be talking about 2 different places. One of them is going to be the Great Dismal Swamp, which is in Southern Virginia and Northern North Carolina in the United States. And the other place is the Rising Star Cave, which is in South Africa. And they're both places that I have been privileged to do some archaeology. So I didn't know that I wanted to be an archaeologist when I was a little kid. This is me having some outdoor adventures. I really liked being outdoors. I really liked exploration and doing just being outside and doing lots of different things. But when I was a kid, actually all the way through college, I wanted to be an astronaut because that was the science that I saw that like seemed like something I could do. I really liked space. There were all of these amazing women who were breaking the glass ceiling in space careers, and that's what I thought I wanted to do. So I studied a lot of science in high school and a lot of science in college. But sometimes we go on about our studies and we find other things that really interest us. So after college, I started leading wilderness expeditions and doing outdoor education, talking to people about natural history and human history, and climbing mountains and taking people mountain climbing and on treks through the desert and things like this. And I did that for a really long time, and I loved it. And I also had other things I was curious about. So eventually I went back to university and I studied archaeology. And these are some pictures of me doing a little bit of archaeology. Well, I'm the one there in the cave, and the person that's sort of lost in the bushes over there is my field assistant, Ella. So the cave is the South Africa site, and you can see Ella there through the bushes, that is in the Dismal swamp. And these are two archaeology projects that I've spent a lot of time working on. I said at the beginning that I didn't really know that archaeology was a career option. So let's just take a minute to think about what archaeology is. If we break the word apart, it comes into two pieces. The first piece means something like ancient or really old, archaeo. And the second piece, ology, like biology or geology or archaeology or paleontology. That means the study of. So we're looking at the study of ancient people. And archaeologists do that through looking at the things that people left behind. So you might recognize some of the different objects on here. Some of them seem kind of modern, like this is an old flip phone here, right? Old flip phone here. Sorry to all the teachers out there. There is a spike from a railroad from the 1800s. We have a piece of a plate from a long time ago, a piece of pottery that's a couple thousand years old, a bottle from the early 20th century, and this thing over here is a cassette tape that has music on it. So these are all the kinds of things that archaeologists would look at to help understand what was going on, what people were doing a long time ago. These over here are projectile points, or sometimes they're called arrowheads. And this is what a lot of people think archaeologists study. But we study a lot more than just the arrowheads. We study anything that people have left behind to help us understand what their lives were like, what they were doing, what kind of resources they had, and things like that. But it's really important to remember that archaeologists do not study dinosaurs. Paleontologists study dinosaurs, and they are awesome and really do really neat science, but that's not us as archaeologists. As archaeologists, we're interested in the people and the things that they left behind. So these are next few pictures are just some images of what archaeology might look like in different parts of the world and in different places. So there I am in a little purple hat over here in the corner. And this is what an archaeology site, sort of if you were looking in a field to see what kind of houses might have been there before, this is what it might look like. Archaeologists like to dig square holes because that helps us keep track of where different objects come from. And then we can take all the information from each of those square holes and put them together like a puzzle to help understand, in this case, we were looking at a house, and where was the living room of the house, and where was the kitchen, and what kind of things did they eat, and where did they throw their trash, and who might have been living in the house. So we dig these holes and we dig down through the dirt, and then we sift. That's what all these little screens are here. We sift the soil, looking for the artifacts that might be in it. Other archaeologists, not me, other archaeologists might work underwater doing something similar with their going scuba diving and investigating archaeology sites that are now under the water, or shipwrecks or things like that. And you might see archaeologists out and about in less remote places doing archaeology if there's going to be some construction. I know here in the United States, if there's going to be construction and it's funded in a certain way, then there has to be archaeology done to make sure that whatever is getting built there, the highway or the building, isn't going to destroy some really interesting piece of our collective past as people. So just a few different places you might see archaeologists working. So you might also see portrayals of archaeologists on TV or in the movies. We got Indiana Jones and the guy over here in the corner who's definitely not an archaeologist, but sometimes tries to talk like one. Archaeology doesn't really happen this way. I've never had to put a weighted thing on top of something to prevent a boulder from rolling me over like in Indiana Jones. But these are common portrayals of archaeologists. And it's really unfortunate because if we look at what actual archaeologists do, it's even more amazing than what's shown on TV. And there's a really fantastic website called Trowel Blazers that was started by a group of archaeologists. And this website highlights the stories of different women who work in fields that require trowels like these for digging. So it could be geologists or paleontologists or archaeologists. And if you're interested in archaeology or any of those kinds of fields, I really encourage you to check this out and see what kind of archaeology other people are doing all over the world and have done in throughout history. It's really interesting, neat thing to check out. Okay, so that was me in Yarmouth. And now we're going to go to the Great Dismal Swamp. We'll go to Rising Star in just a minute. So the Great Dismal Swamp is circled there in red on my screen here. It's just kind of south of Washington, D.C., near Norfolk, Virginia. And it is, as the name would suggest, it is great. It's really large. It's a swamp. It's soggy. It's a wooded wetland. And dismal, well, I suppose that's a matter of perspective. It can be pretty dismal in the summertime when it's hot and humid and the bugs are out. But other times it can be really beautiful, like in this picture here. And one of the reasons that we as archaeologists are interested in the Great Dismal Swamp is because during the early part of the colonies and before the Civil War, two groups of people lived in the Great Dismal Swamp. Enslaved laborers, people who were still slaves that were being forced to work there to dig canals and harvest timber, and maroons, or people who had taken themselves away from being slaves. So they'd sort of run away. They were capturing freedom for themselves by living in the swamp. And it's an interesting thing to think about, these two groups of people living in the swamp at the same time. And as you can see in some of these pictures here, like on this crazy map here, I think that this picture of the swamp makes it look like a monster there with the arms and the little head and Lake Drummond there in his tummy. And this picture is from the mid-1800s. And it shows what people outside of the swamp who didn't live there and didn't really know what it was like, I think it shows what they kind of thought about it, that it was like scary and it's just stretched all over and it was kind of a blank spot except for the lake in the middle. And there wasn't too much interesting about it. And that's one of the things that made it a great place for the Maroons to hide out so that they didn't have to be captured back into slavery. And if you walk into the swamp today, there are some roads that go in, and you can see them on this map here, but mostly what you will see is really thick vegetation. It's so many trees and so much bushes and other kinds of plants. And that's great because it makes it a good place to kind of hide. It's great because it gives you lots of resources, lots of things to eat and things to build with. And if you're an archaeologist trying to find where people lived there, it's pretty hard to figure it out because you can't see more than a couple meters in front of you. When we first started working in the swamp, the only way to find out where people were was to go tromping through, bashing through all these bushes. But then we got an image from LiDAR, which is when an airplane flies over the swamp, flies over an area, and it shoots sort of laser beams down, and it measures how fast those laser beams get reflected back up. And it gives us a map of what's under the trees and through all that vegetation. And one of the things we realized is that there are all of these islands. That's what these red splotches here are. They're images on the LiDAR of these islands. There's all these islands in the swamp. So we started exploring the islands to see if we could find out where the people were living. And in fact, here's another little teeny island that you wouldn't see unless you knew right where to go for it. In fact, we found that people were living on almost all of these islands. Almost all the ones we've looked at, we do some excavation, digging down through the soil, and we find evidence of cabins and of cooking places and other artifacts and things that show us where the Maroons and sometimes where the enslaved laborers were living in the swamp. And these are stories that you kind of hear rumors about in textbooks or in the historical documents, but the people who were living here didn't read and write, and they didn't really, in most cases, have their stories told. So by doing this archaeology, we're able to recover these sort of lost stories about American history. So here's just a few of the artifacts that we find. And from these little bits and pieces, we're able to piece together the story of the Maroons who were living here. So this picture here, this thing that looks like a potato on the one side, that's actually a rock that was ground or was ground into the shape of an axe a couple thousand years ago. And then the people who were living there more recently in the 17 and 1800s found it and resharpened it and reused it. So they were kind of being archaeologists in their own right. Here's just a little video of us trying to cross one of the canals that's in the swamp. Archaeology is pretty serious business. We do a lot of science, and then sometimes we have to do silly things to be able to do our science, like take a little raft across a canal. All right. So I'm going to move on now from still in Yarmouth. We've finished talking about the Dismal, and now we're going to talk about the Rising Star Cave. The Rising Star Cave uses a particular section of archaeology that we call paleoanthropology. So one more time, paleo is really, really old or a long, long time ago. Anthro is having to do with people. And again, ology is the study of. So archaeology, we study ancient humans from the artifacts they left behind. In paleoanthropology, we go even further back in time, and we study human evolution and how we got to be the humans, the Homo sapiens that we are today. We still don't study dinosaurs, even though we sometimes look at fossils. They're more recent fossils than dinosaurs. So here we are in the cradle of humankind. It is an area in South Africa that's known for lots of caves. And inside those caves, we find lots of fossils of ancient human ancestors from millions of years to hundreds of thousands of years old. And there I am laying face down on a ladder that's going sideways, excavating fossils. And this cave is pretty wild to get into. You start up here on the surface and you start walking down, and pretty soon it gets narrower and narrower, and you're climbing over boulders. And then you go through an area right here where you got to lay on your belly and crawl, just like scooching along on your belly. And then you go up this big climb that's like a knife edge called the Dragon's Back. And then you drop down again through a super narrow area we call the chute. And finally, when you get back there, that's where we find the hominin fossils, these fossils of our ancient human ancestors. Here is a picture, a video of my friend, my colleague, Matabella, going through that Superman crawl. This is how we get to work every day when we're working there. He doesn't have a very happy look on his face, but it's pretty fun. It's way better than sitting in traffic someplace. Well, yeah, that last little bit there where he kind of grimaced, that's a little hard to get out of. But it's still fun, and that's how we go caving through to do our excavations. When we get down there, we use different kinds of tools that some of them we might use in surface archaeology, and some of them are special because of the soils in the cave that we're excavating. So you can see we have toothpicks and paintbrushes, and we're carefully measuring where all the artifacts are coming from, just like in those square holes I showed you up at, from the very beginning. We might use things like ground penetrating radar, which is what these guys are doing over here on the side to help us peek underneath the surface before we excavate. And my very favorite archaeology tool is on the screen, and it's a porcupine quill. There are porcupines that live near the entrance to this cave, and sometimes they drop their quills, and then we can pick them up, and they're pointy, so we can excavate very carefully with them, but they're a little bit soft, so they don't damage the fossils. This is what it looks like on top of the Rising Star Cave. And then these are pictures of different fossils here that we were excavating. And I have this one right over here. You can see if you kind of stare at the image for long enough, the fossils, the bones start to become easier to see. There are lines of bones here and a little bone over here. And this is a hand curled up with its fingers curled and the thumb sticking out like this. And after we excavated that hand, let's see, Jesse, can you see the picture there? There we go. After we excavated that hand, we were able to 3D scan all of the bones and then print them out, and we could see what the hand from these fossils looked like. So it kind of goes like that. There we go. There's the hand. Okay. Thank you.
That's amazing, by the way. I'm just going to intersperse to say that. That's incredible.
Yeah. This thing in the middle here, probably everybody recognizes that. Those are teeth. This is a bottom jaw, mandible. And then the sort of speckly mess over here is a little bit hard to see, and it was hard to see when we were excavating it until we could get it to the surface. But there are some ribs and some other bones that's sort of from the upper body of this ancient human ancestor that we found in this cave. Go, next slide. There we go. So after we got the fossils out from the cave and we started looking at them, this is a picture of only a few of the fossils that we found. You can see lots of teeth up here at the top, and then some bits of different skulls and arm bones and leg bones and spine and feet and hands. When we got them up to the surface and we started studying them, we realized that we had just met a new cousin of Homo sapiens, one that we hadn't ever met before. It was a species that nobody had ever seen before. And we were able to discover these fossils and discover this new species. And the species is named Homo naledi. And this is what a part of a Homo naledi skull looks like. Here, I've got a better one right here with me. This is a replica, not the real thing. Those are in South Africa. But this is a replica of a Homo naledi skull. Yeah. Here we go. You can see it kind of looks like us. It's got its eyes facing forward, and it's, it has teeth very similar to ours, but it's got some pretty big differences too. Their brain is a lot smaller than ours, and their faces are not as upright as ours are. And there's some other differences as well. Okay. Ooh, lost the little thing that makes the slides go. There we go. There's that hand again and the foot. These are all pictures of the fossils of Homo naledi. So this video is my friend Marina and I and some of our other colleagues taking out fossils from way deep down in the cave. Inside that black bag, you can see us really carefully maneuvering, is some of those fossils that are encased in plaster. And it's really heavy, and it's very, very delicate because it's so humid in that cave that the plaster wouldn't dry. So we rigged up kind of a little zip line for the fossils to be able to get them down that dragon's back knife edge, and carefully lowered them. There's Matabella again helping to manage the ropes. Carefully lowering it down there. This video is sped up a lot. It normally takes us 20 minutes to get from the surface down into the cave once we learn the route. But in this case with these fossils, it took us about 2 hours. There we are going through that Superman crawl with those fossils. Carefully lifting them up. It takes a lot of teamwork. All of archaeology and really all of science is a lot about teamwork. And sometimes it's people physically helping you like this to hoist the fossils up over the steps that we have to do. Sometimes it's working together to do the excavations. Sometimes it's bringing in people who have expertise that you don't have, like here we go, to help study the fossils. So when you're an archaeologist or a paleoanthropologist, you might have a specialty of studying just the teeth or just the hands or just the stone tools if there are stone tools on your archaeology site. And so you get all of those people with those different specialties together, and you kind of put your heads together to help understand what's going on. Very much a team effort. And then if you're lucky, your archaeology stuff might get to go in a museum exhibit like this one here. This was in Texas a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic. So when I was a kid, people always asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wanted to be an astronaut for a long time because that was the kinds of things that I was seeing. But I like to ask kids, what are you curious about? Because sometimes those things that you're curious about how the world works, or about, my case, about the past and how people from the past are the same and different from people today, or other things, thinking about what we're curious about might lead us to different careers that we hadn't thought about yet. Like in my case, becoming an archaeologist. If you want to learn more about the Dismal Swamp, my if-then friend, Dr. Jay Gardner, who is in part of her life, she's a cancer researcher. In part of her life, she's a comic book illustrator. She and I wrote a comic book about archaeology in the Great Dismal Swamp. So I think Jesse will share that link with you, and you can check that out. And if you want to read more about the fossils from South Africa, there's an article in Frontiers for Young Minds called Meet Neo, Your Distant Cousin, that talks about the paleoanthropology and what we did to excavate and learn about Homo naledi. There's trailblazers again. So just as a closing out, archaeology is a great science that involves being outdoors and history and learning about people. And for me, really, one of my favorite parts is that we get to learn about old stories that either we have forgotten about or that we don't even know yet. So thank you for listening. Jesse, over to you.
Dr. Becca, thank you for such a wild ride. That was an incredible presentation by any of our standards, and we were really lucky to have some of the coolest people come in all the time. Thank you so much for that. That was one of the first times we've had the chance to talk about the Dismal Swamp too, which is very cool. And as you noted, I will be linking in the article, the comic, to absolutely all our registered classes. If you want to keep the learning going when this is done, lots of opportunities to do just that. Now, before we dive in with Q&A and get all our excited kids, including the 1 bazillion kids in Mr. McEwen's class, there's 1 bazillion of you, I think, right? There's like so many of you. Hi. We're going to come to all our classes in just a minute for that Q&A, but we're going to start with our Kahoot together. So 4 quick questions, test your understanding, have a little bit of fun. If you're new to Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you get. And what you win is Becca and I's everlasting respect. And I think that's pretty cool. So we're going to take off that game pin. We're going to get going live with us in a second. I promise some of these answers were covered during our broadcast today, so feel free to yell it out too in your classes. And we are going to get started with our game. And then, Mr. McEwen, I will be coming to you guys in Calgary first. So nice to have our DeWitt Middle School friends and Mr. Shattuck's class as well. So stay tuned. Live classes, YouTubers, you can share questions in the chat as well. All right, true or false? Archaeology has you digging up dinosaur bones. What do we think? I think we did mention this a couple times, and this is a very common thing that a lot of people think. But Becca, I don't remember seeing any T-Rexes in your presentation today.
No T-Rexes today. No pterodactyls.
No, very. I mean, as cool as they are, don't get me wrong.
They are really cool.
We are. Yes, all of you got this. False. Way to go. Okay, good. You're 100% in. That's the first 100% I think we've ever had in any Kahoot. So, Dr. Becca, you got the message across. Becca was an integral part of the mission to learn more about what human species. I brought up its name really quickly on a minute ago. This is a picture from the presentation. Is it Homo sapiens, Australopithecus afarensis, Homo naledi, or Neanderthals? Now, I think a lot of you will know the name Neanderthals. Maybe that's not what we're talking about today. Maybe it is. We're going to find out in a second. I'm kind of hoping, and I think this is the case, that this will be a new name for a lot of you, and you should all take time to look it up. Most of you got this right. That is spectacular. Homo naledi is one of the best most amazing science stories in my entire lifetime. Like, honestly, it's hard to get my jaw to hit the floor. I've seen a lot of exciting stuff. And when we first brought Dr. Becca on, it like blew my mind. All right. Creative crane in third. Now, this is going to be a multi-select, so it's more than one answer. Archaeologists get to, what do they get to do? Do they get to uncover the story of humanity, work with colleagues from all around the world, travel to amazing locations, or use fancy and expensive lab equipment? I think, this is one of the joys about science, is that, like, I think a lot of us have a scientific thought in our mind of what a scientist does, and then we do a presentation like this, and we get to showcase that it's all of these things, of course. It is all of these things. Now, I know we didn't talk about some fancy lab equipment all the time. Yes, archaeologists get to use all scientists get to use fancy and expensive lab equipment. It's one of the joys of being a scientist. Quick note before our fourth question. DeWitt Middle School, share questions in the chat really quick, and then I'll make sure I get them if you have to go soon. Don't worry, get them in. All right, there's still more to discover about human history. I know Dr. Peixotto has discovered a lot, but is there still more to find? What do we think? I think this should be like unanimous. I want to hear all of you chime in with this. It is not false. That's our spoiler. It's true. There's so much more to discover. There you go. You can't switch your answers. It's too late. But there's so much to discover. Two of you thought not, and that's okay. But there's so much more. Get ready to have your mind blown. We are going to check our leaderboard here, okay? If you are any of these folks, let us know who you are in the chat. Wise Dragon is third. All right. Dun, 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 dun. Clever Puffin is second, which is inexplicably a bunny with hearts above his head. I don't know why. Kind of fun. And then number one, Expert Buffalo, Dead Heat, first and second. Way to go, everybody. That is amazing. All right. DeWitt Middle School. I'm going to come to you really quick, Mr. McEwen. I will come second, but our DeWitt friends have to go in Michigan. So, do you have any questions for Dr. Becca before you go?
Questions really quick. Anybody? Doesn't sound like it.
The next period. We caught them at the end. Well, that is okay, guys. Thank you so much. We're going to head to Mr. McEwen's group now. So again, we've got I think the entire school, all of Calgary, all of Alberta in one classroom today.
What's your
yes?
question?
So many.
Okay, Sky, come here, Sky. All right, we have Sky coming on over. She has a neat question here for you.
Hi.
How can I, as a fifth grader, experience archaeology?
Yes.
Sky, that's a fantastic question. How can you, as a fifth grader, experience archaeology? Let's see. You're there in Calgary. So I think if you go to one of the museums there, you can probably see some archaeology, some things that have been excavated from around your area. And you probably have an archaeology society in your town that sometimes archaeology societies and museums will have public excavations, public digs, so that you can join in and try out archaeology and learn about it that way.
I would encourage, honestly, Calgary is a fantastic city. There's so many amazing resources. You guys have incredible museums. You've got a world-class university, and you've got literally the best single public library building in all of Canada. So go explore those places. Talk to the people there. If you want to do archaeology, I can guarantee if you ask, archaeologists like Dr. Becca will jump at the chance to help you out and get you involved if you're a fifth grader or any other age. Great question to kick us off, Sky. Mr. Shattuck's class, our sweepers, Henry, Kaya, Alex, were the 1, 2, and 3 in the Kahoot. Come on in, guys, and take us away with a question. Hi.
What made you want to be an archaeologist?
Yes.
What made me want to be an archaeologist? So I have always really liked going to museums, and I've always really been interested in finding things when I've been sort of out exploring and wondering who walked here on this trail before me, or why is this trail here if I was out hiking somewhere. So when I went to university and took my first archaeology class, I realized that there was this science that could help answer some of those questions for me. And to help us all of us as people learn about people from the past. And just about anywhere you go on Earth, somebody in over the course of history has been there before. And it's always an interesting thing for me to think about, what did that person experience? What were they doing, before my house was standing here and somebody, a Native American person walked across the land that I'm on now. And what was it like then, and what were their lives like?
What a beautiful answer. I like that so much. It's always been one of my favorite kinds of questions. So thank you very much, Mr. Shattuck's class. But thank you for that, Becca. That was great. YouTubers, I'm going to say, if you want to chime in, don't be shy. We've got 10 minutes together, so we got lots of time. But we're going to head back to our Calgary crew. Mr. McEwen, come on in. Take us away. Hey.
Come on in. Introduce yourself. Sorry, we're just going to run right up here.
Oh, no worries. Take your time.
Okay, here we go. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Harlow, and I was wondering, what's the coolest fossil you found?
Ooh.
Pressure. Thanks, Harlow.
Wow. Okay. So I, as an archaeologist, I'm supposed to say that it's not one particular thing. It's all of the things together that help us tell the story. Right. So it's not just that we found one projectile point, one arrowhead, or one piece of pottery or something. And while those are cool, it's the whole of them all together that help us tell the story. But also, finding this hand in that cave is got to be, hands down, pardon the pun, the coolest thing that I have ever found. When we were excavating this, the first thing that came up was just one of the bones from the palm of the hand. And I saw that and I thought, that's pretty interesting. Let me leave it there and see what's nearby. And that kept happening across all of the bits of the hand until we could see a hand laying in the dirt like that. And it was pretty special to think about. That hand looks a lot like mine. It's not exactly like it, but it looks a lot like it, a lot like it. And it was a pretty special experience to take several hours. It took a long time to excavate this hand. And this is a copy of the hand, not the original one, right? It took several hours to do that, but it was a really exciting thing to be able to excavate. In part because we don't find very many of these in the fossil record. The bones are so small, they often just decompose before they become fossils.
That's an unreal find. I mean, I know our sort of popular depiction of fossils is like the full dinosaur skeleton, the full body. That never happens. Like, that is so unusual and amazing to find something like that. Lucky you. And thank you for throwing professional detachment to the side and picking a favorite. We don't get a lot of people picking favorites, so thank you. Mr. Shattuck, I'm coming back to you guys in a second, but my mom has entered the YouTube chat. Now, I tell her about every broadcast that we ever do, but she has a great question, which is Homo naledi a human who lived after the Leaky Lucy discovery? So Lucy is a famous, iconic fossil in the history of sort of paleoanthropology. Where does naledi fit in the timeline?
Yeah. So Homo naledi is about 250,000 years old. Lucy, we're talking about millions of years old. So more recent than most of the other species. In fact, it's so recent that in other parts of the world, not in this part of South Africa, but in other parts of the world, there were creatures on Earth that looked an awful lot more like Homo sapiens than they looked like Homo naledi. So we had different species of hominins, different species of ancient human ancestors, all living on Earth at the same time. And Homo naledi kind of overlapped with these guys. Yeah.
Like, I know that you live and breathe this, and so you've known this fact for well over a decade. I learned it, I think, when I was like 22. It's still one of the coolest facts in the history of science. Like, we were not the only human on Earth for quite a bit of our history as a species. That's mind-blowing. And I encourage all our classes to look into that a little bit more when you're done. It's not something that we can cover in one broadcast fully, but it is an incredible fact. Becca, we've got time for like 3 more questions. I want to make sure we get them in. You guys are an amazing audience today. Mr. Shattuck's class, I'm coming to you. Take us away.
How hard is it to get? How long and hard is it to get out of the chute?
To get out of the chute in the Rising Star Cave. So the chute is about 18 centimeters wide at its narrowest point. So it's not a round, it's like sort of a slot like this. It's about 18 centimeters wide. So you have to learn how to move your body in just the right way so that you can get your head up through that little slot. And we have to measure all of our equipment and stuff and make sure it'll fit down through there as well. So the chute itself takes, that part if you're not carrying anything, it can go pretty fast. But if you have any fossils with you, you got to be extra careful. And it can take 10 or 15 minutes just to go like 12 feet. So it can be slow going. Sometimes you can do it quickly.
Better you than me. It looks terrifying. I did just put in the chat and the YouTube chat a little link to the Rising Star cave system. So if you want to see some videos of that a little bit more, there's some of the best stuff that National Geographic has made in years on that. So I'll make sure all our classes have that as well. All right, we're going to do one more round with our 2 live groups. Mr. McEwen's class coming back to you. Take us away.
What's the hardest piece of equipment that you ever used?
Ooh, the hardest piece of equipment to use. Well, gosh, that's a challenging question. Sometimes the soil we're digging, if we're excavating on the surface, sometimes the soil we're digging is really soft, and like you can take a shovel or a trowel and dig with it, no problem. Sometimes though, if there's a lot of clay or there's a lot of rocks, the most difficult piece of equipment to use can sometimes just be the basic shovel, because you're trying to like dig down into the dirt without damaging any of the artifacts that might be under there. And there's rocks and the ground might be frozen or it might be really hard. And so sometimes it's the basic piece of equipment that can be the most difficult to use.
And thank you for the first ever aggressive shovel diorama in the history of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. 3,000 broadcasting. We've never had someone so aggressive. Rebecca, I'm going to head to Mr. Shattuck's class in just a second to wrap us up. I do want to note for all our kids joining today, this will be on our YouTube channel. You can check it out there after the broadcast. Share it with your family and friends. Check out our entire If Then series, 16 broadcasts. This is just number 1. We've got so many more amazing women to come. It's going to be such a wild week. And of course, ifthenshecan.org, at ifthenshecan. So much to explore and discover. And I'll make sure that we get all our links that Becca shared with us. Trailblazers, the comic, her Frontiers article, Rising Star Cave, all of that coming up after the show. So stay tuned for that in just a minute. Mr. Shattuck, wrap us up with one final question. Take us away.
What's your biggest bone you found?
The biggest bone you've ever found.
Biggest bone I've ever found. We found some parts of a femur, which is the thigh bone, the big bone in the top part of your leg. And I think that's probably, in terms of like biggest around and longest, it's probably the biggest single bone we've found.
There you are. If you feel your own femur, it's a pretty big bone. It's right up there with like your hips and other things. So hard to beat that on the human body. Dr. Becca, before we wrap up, you know what? We got an extra minute. Is there any last message you want to share with our kids today about archaeology, about your career, about your time with If Then? Anything you want to leave us with to wrap up the program today?
Wow.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. So archaeology is really awesome. It's fun to learn about things that happened in the past and think about how we can learn from people in the past about how we might think about our future and how we might think about doing things differently or the same in the future as we look at climate change or sea level rise or other kinds of things like that. We can learn things from people in the past. Yeah. And the second thing I want to say is that if you have an interest that's outside of whatever your focus is, maybe there's a class that you think is kind of interesting or a book you want to read, I encourage you to like branch out and try to and learn as many different kinds of things as you can, because you never know how all of those things might knit together later on down the line. Like for me, in studying different sciences and being outdoors, and that comes together in archaeology. You never know how all those things are going to knit together and help you make really exciting and fun discoveries about the world around us in whatever field you might be studying.
What a beautiful last message. Your career is such a testament to that sentiment. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day to kick off our incredible If Then series. And I want to stress to our audience too, without Dr. Becca, this series would not have come together at all. So you are an all-star in every way, shape, and form. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm going to bring in our live classes to join me in saying a big thank you and farewell. So Mr. Shattuck's class, the bazillion kids in Mr. McEwen's class. Miss Maxwell, I know you're off at home, but thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Right now, guys. We'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.